Hi, Allison. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
That was a deep breath. I saw that. All right.
We're hanging a show right now that opens tomorrow.
Oh
So I
my-
just walked out of my office and said, "Nobody hammer, turn down the radio."
So you're hanging a show for tomorrow.
Yes, we just took down a show Tuesday, which was the Cowgirl Artist of America women's work show. So
Yes.
that one came down Tuesday. All the boxes and pieces went up to our third floor for packing and shipping, and started hanging. We have a show that we do every year, and this is our third year. It's called Resonance, and it's where between 30 and 40. This year we have 35 professional artists and 7 or 8 students from Trinidad State College that choose a photo from our archives. All of Mitchell's reference photos, just photos that he took forever. We've got thousands and thousands of them. And they choose a photo from the archives and create either something that's inspired by, or some people are very literal. Some people just take a cloud out of it and do a whole piece from it. So that opens Friday.
And so that's basically 50 people, 20 from the community college area.
There's about 8 from the college, 8 or 9 from the college, and about 35 artists from all over.
And are those artists people that are actually artists making a living as an artist? Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're professional artists then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it. And do you sell the work?
We do. We recreate the photo and hang it next to
Oh, that's cool.
the new original artwork.
And
And there's no two are alike. We don't use a photo again once it's used. Although
you
we
burn
did,
it?
we don't. We did let the students pick whatever photo they wanted. They didn't have to stick with the 100 or so that we released this year.
Mm.
And then once it's used, we'll let other artists look at that database of pieces that have been used. Like for the last couple of years, Peggy Judy has used a ton of Mitchell photos in her work, and it's selling like hotcakes. She's
Yeah,
doing really well
great.
with it.
Yeah, we show her work.
Yeah, she was in the first, well, she's been in all 3 shows.
Mm. So we should introduce you because nobody knows what we're doing. We came on, but here we go. Allyson
Nobody knows who I am.
Yeah, Allyson Scheumaker, right? And you
Yeah.
are the director of the A.R. Mitchell Museum in Trinidad, Colorado, right? And how long have you been doing that position? There you go.
I have been doing this, it'll be 7 years in February, so just
Okay,
over 6 years.
that's a long time. And that museum opened in what, 1981?
1981, in a different location, just a little farther down Main Street. We're still on Main Street. We were in a building which it's called the Famous. It was an old department store, and then the building that we're in now, Jameson. It was Jameson's department store. It's 47,000 square feet of 1906 goodness. The original 10 ceilings, a big mezzanine, the original wood floors. All of our display cases, a lot of our furnishings came from that old department store.
So
It's awesome.
all the furniture so you're including your office desks and all that all came from.
Right. I'm looking at 2 big giant oak desks.
Uh-huh.
The most gorgeous. I've seen one other place. It's a stacking file system, but it's quarter sawn oak.
Yep, I
And
had one of those for many years. I used very
I'm,
functional.
I'm looking right at it. I love it, and it's easy for me to move because I can just take the top shelf off, do
Mhm.
the next one, do the next one.
Yep.
But
And so when did that department store close? The
the
James.
department store. So the department store actually opened in the 1880s. Again, further down Main Street, and 1889, I believe, is when the store originally opened, and they built this in 1906 and moved in here in 1906. It was state of the art. We still have the old cash rail system, the Lamson cash rail system, because I mean, this was the old West. Main Street is the Santa Fe Trail. So you didn't keep cash on the main floor by the front door. It was locked up in the cashier's office, and this basket would take the money or the receipts up to the cashier's office,
Hmm.
make change, and then it would come back down. And we still have all of that.
And so
It
this was,
closed in 1985. 1985 is when it closed.
so I see. So, and that closed. And was it a department store until 1985?
It was a it's only been two things. It's been the department store and it's been the Mitchell Museum. So the museum, the board, the foundation bought it, I believe, in 89, and we relocated and opened back up in here in 1991. So we've been, and we own the building. We own the building outright. So
Wow.
we moved in here and have been in this location since 1991. And we also kind of feel like the building is as much a part of the collection as the artwork is. And oftentimes it gets more attention than the artwork does because
I can see
it's
that.
a building.
Yeah,
It's a
because
great
it was, and was it built in 1906 or did it open in? Yeah.
it was I think it started in 1905 and finished in 1906.
So let's talk about, we're going to talk about you, but I want to talk about Trinidad because it's a very interesting city.
It
I've,
is.
I've always liked Trinidad. I've always thought that would be a wonderful place to first open a business. Two, it's not found yet. Maybe it is, and you can tell me if it is.
It's starting to be discovered.
Yeah, I would think so. I actually looked at a big building out there at one time to buy, which is on the north side of town. That was maybe a glass factory or something like that. It had it was,
Keller Glass. It was kind of like a big metal building, and it was Keller Glass Company was
yeah.
there.
I just thought it had an old house associated with it. It had a little buildings and things, and I thought it would be a great artist retreat or something. I don't know what happened to it,
It's
but
still there.
yeah,
It's still there. I don't know. I know the building sold. It may just be like a construction, like
yeah.
a lay down for construction. I'm not 100% sure. My kids went to Honey School, and Keller Glass was on the way to the bus stop to Honey School. So I used to see it all the time, but my kids are 26, 23, and almost 21 now. So I haven't driven to the bus stop in a
Mhm.
while to see what it is
It's
now.
not that bus stop, maybe a different
Yeah.
kind of bus stop. Great.
Their bus stop was in the movie theater parking lot, is where their bus stop was.
And so how long have you been in Trinidad
I
yourself?
have been in Trinidad since 2011. I actually, so in 1990, the summer before I went to college, I had a summer job at the Chronicle News in Trinidad. And my aunt worked for the parent company in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I came up here for the summer. And if you had told that 18-year-old that she'd moved back to Trinidad and raised three kids and run that newspaper, I'd have thought there's no way. There absolutely no way that's ever going to happen. But that is what happened. So 2011, my aunt called and said, "We need you in Trinidad for 3 days." The building had caught on fire, and they wanted kind of an honest assessment. They had the general contractor here, but the owners lived in Louisiana. So I was my ex-husband and I were stationed in Colorado Springs. So she said, "Could you just drive down to Trinidad just for 3 days? And I've got a list of things for you to do." And by July, I had bought a house and was the general manager of the newspaper.
And did you have any training in that?
No, not at all. My degree was in home economics, vocational home economics, which doesn't even exist anymore. But I think they felt like they could trust me and they could train me. That they knew me. I grew up in the newspaper, just hanging out with my aunt. And I went to every seminar, every training on the circulation system, got to know the community, and did that for 7 years. And then the newspaper sold. And I was on the board of the museum. I had gotten my master's degree while I was at the newspaper. And I was on the board at the museum and knew that we were looking for a director. And it was kind of at the end of a meeting, and we had been talking about hiring a director, and what it would take to get somebody to move to Trinidad, how much we'd have to pay them, all that kind of stuff. And I just said, what if we hired somebody with a business mind and not an artist, and just see what happens? Because it had traditionally been an artist that had run the museum. And they said, do you have anybody in mind? And I just kind of raised my hand and said, I'm going to need a job. I just found out yesterday that the newspaper is selling and the people that are buying it want to run it themselves. So I would have been out of a job. And my kids were still in school, and I didn't want to move them. And they hired me on the spot. And that was February of 2018.
So when you were you were running the newspaper, you were doing all the business components, circulation, even
Advertising, all of
hiring and firing reporters and getting
Yep.
all that.
Doing it. In fact, the current editor of the Chronicle News, I hired him when I was still there. He's actually been there through 3 different owners, but he's still the editor today.
And the newspaper clearly is still going.
And what a fun fact, Mitchell, Arthur Roy Mitchell, worked for the newspaper and ran circulation and advertising as a teenager, actually. He was, of course, now back then, his education ended in 8th grade. So a 17-year-old, that was not unusual for a 17-year-old to be, to have a full-time job and be working. But he did cartoons, he mocked up advertising, all of that. He worked in publishing for several years before he ever went to art school.
Okay, before I get completely into him, because once we do, we probably won't pivot back, but where are you from with that accent? Is that?
I am from Lake Charles, Louisiana, but we moved to Pearland, Texas, right outside of Houston, when I was 10 or 11, and then graduated from high school there, went to college in Arkansas.
Were you interested in art as a kid at all?
No, art was never even talked about. Nobody even, I didn't even know, I didn't know anybody that owned art. I didn't know anything about it.
What did your parents do?
My dad was a geologist. He worked for the PPG refinery, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And they entertained a lot. Food, being from Louisiana, food was always a big thing. So most of my creativity, I can't draw a stick figure, but I can cook. And I actually get to do that at the museum every first Friday. We have an opening. We have Kiel Fine Art Gallery, which is a contemporary gallery in the front of the museum. And then 4 to 5 times a year, we'll have a major show on the mezzanine level. And I do all the food for for our openings. And this one gentleman asked one time, he said, who's the artist that does the food? And I just went, oh, that would be me. He called me an artist, but I can just make food look really good. But no, art was never, there was one lady, Miss Caroline Limeberry, that did, my mom hired her to do portraits of my brother and myself. And they hung in our house forever. She gave me mine, but it was done from a school picture.
Right.
And that was the only thing art related until I think I was a senior in high school. My humanities class went to, I can't remember which museum it was in Houston, but they were having a Salvador Dali exhibit. And I was blown away. I was like, what am I looking at? What in the world is this? And I started being interested in, like, wanting to own what I thought was a real piece of art, not something that was bought at Hobby Lobby or something like that. But the first time I walked into the museum, I came in for a fundraiser for a local our local animal shelter is called Noah's Ark, and they would do a big party called the Fur Ball, and it was in the Mitchell Museum. Museum. And I came in for that, and I didn't even see the art on the wall. I was just blown away by the architecture that I was looking at. And then they asked me to be on the board, and I came into the building for a board meeting and saw all the art. I mean, there was like 300 people in here. I wasn't looking at what was on the walls. And Mitchell's landscapes, his illustrations are fun. I mean, they're just fun. His landscapes, you can drive anywhere in Trinidad. You can drive out east and pick out a place where Mitchell painted. You can drive up Highway 12. We have geolocations of several places where Mitchell painted. His sister had a ranch up Highway 12. And it touched me. And it's like I was hypnotized by Mitchell's artwork. And now you go into my house, and all the pieces of artwork that I own are all by artists that I know. I would have never thought I know an artist. You know, I would say I know Miss Caroline Lineberry, but that would be it. One of my dearest friends from growing up, her mother-in-law is a watercolor artist in Louisiana. And so my first actual piece of art was we all got prints as bridesmaids gifts that Nancy Melton made. And that still hangs in my house. I've had that hanging in my house for 25, 20, I don't, when did they give it? 90, 95, no, 98, 99. I've had
a
that
long
since
time.
98, 99. Yeah, that was my first real piece of art. And now I have 3 pieces by Nancy Melton. But art just wasn't even in my sight at all. I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
And now, kind of like with the newspaper, when the museum hired me, they knew my reputation as a businesswoman in town, but they also knew I didn't know anything about art. That's the good thing about a board and having artists on our board is they know what I don't know. But just like with the newspaper, I just dove in head first and learned all that I could about it, at least about Mitchell and
Right.
about the people that were around Mitchell. I'll have a lot of people ask me, do you know this artist or this artist? And I was like, if it's not hanging in this museum, I don't know a whole lot about it,
Right.
but I'm learning. I am learning.
Plus, you know a lot about contemporary art because you work with artists, living artists, on
Yes.
a regular, intimate basis.
Yes, and I ask a lot of questions, and they I don't know if they get sick of my questions. Yesterday, we were talking about a piece that's hanging, and I was talking to one of our board members, fully not knowing it was her piece that I was complaining about. And I was like, "What? This is a Native American. Why does he not have a face? Where's his face? Here's the face in the photo, but where's his face?" She's like, "Allyson, I'm an abstract artist. I didn't want to have to." It was just funny. I was like, "Oh wait, this is your piece. Sorry. I really like it. I just wondered why there was no face."
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with questioning things when you see it. That's what art's supposed to do, right? It's supposed to make your emotion, and to interpret. You don't have to
Really
be.
does that to me.
Yeah.
In fact, that same board member, Karen Rail, she's an artist, and the piece next to her was by Ty Barhog, and it's a winter piece, and I got chill bumps. I said, "I'm cold looking at this," and Karen said, "I love how art does that to you. She's seen it happen to me multiple times, but I'm like, I feel like I need a sweater looking at his piece because it's a wet, cold, and looks like it's nasty outside. The wind's blowing, and I would have never thought that I could look at a painting and it would make me feel something like that until I started hanging out with all these artists and all the art that's building right now."
So I know you are an artist when it comes to food, but have you tried art? Have you tried to draw or paint? I know you said you can't do it, but have you tried?
I'm okay. So I'm a little hard-headed. I'm a lot hard-headed. And my ex-husband told me one time I wanted to paint a picnic table, and he's like, you can't do that. You're not an artist. You can't do that." And this was before the internet, or maybe the beginning of the internet, certainly before Google. And I got this little book we were living in Minot, North Dakota. And I bought a picnic table at a garage sale, and somebody had painted it white. And I painted this big scene on it, and I actually found a picture of it about a month ago, and it was birds and grass and a bird feeder and some other things. But I think mainly I did it just because he said I couldn't, or that but we do several art classes here. Several different artists do art classes. And I've always wanted to take it and just see what I could learn, see, what's me telling myself I can't do it, or, what I just need to learn how to do. But I'm not that mom. If my kid said, draw me a dog, I could draw a cloud. I
Yeah.
can,
Okay.
it's about it, but
Clouds are harder than dogs. Excellent.
they would know what a cloud was. I mean, if I drew it, they would know it was a cloud. If I tried to draw a dog,
Mhm.
probably wouldn't know what it was.
So you've been in Trinidad how long exactly? When did you come to the
2011.
Okay, so 13 years. And so you've been there a long, your kids grew up there, you know the city, you've
Yeah.
been on the board for longer than you've been in the museum. You've been in the museum director for 7 years.
And I was on the board for 4 years before that.
Okay. So the whole time, basically, you've been here.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So something drew you to it as a board member. Why was that you go, I'm going to go to that board?
I liked that it was not political. It was not, because I worked at the newspaper, it was important to me to be completely non-biased about everything that I did. Like I didn't have a political sign in my yard. I didn't campaign for anybody. That was really important to me. And the Mitchell Museum to me seemed like a place that I could do good, and it not have anything to do with my job or not reflect on my job. And my job could actually help the museum by stories in the newspaper, advertising, or things like that. I just felt like I could be helpful. I don't set myself up for failure. So if somebody asks me to do something and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt I'm going to be horrible at it, I'm fine to say no. But I get out of my comfort zone a lot. How else am I going to learn? But I just felt like it was a place where I could be of service and do some good and help. And they needed, we were doing a lot of events, hosting events and things, and that's something I can do in my sleep. If you said, hey, I need to plan a party for 50 people in the next day or two, I can do that in my sleep. If you said, we need to raise $500,000, that's going to completely get me out of my comfort zone, but it's a challenge that I'm up for. And I feel like I think I can do this. Let's do this. But the entertaining part of it that went with the museum, that was kind of my niche as a board member, was contributing to that part of it, planning our annual ball, which is coming up October 19th. Things like that, I felt like I could help and bring something new that maybe Trinidad hadn't seen before.
Organizational skills.
Yep.
Yep. Which also is required for cooking. You have to be It is, right? I mean,
timing, lists, all of that I can do without even really thinking. My husband Scott, he's retired from the airline industry, and he wanted to open a restaurant. He had restaurant experience from a long time ago, but not necessarily recipe development or things like that. So when he said, I'm going to open a brick oven pizza place, I start immediately. I'm developing a menu. I'm developing the dough recipe, teaching him how to make the dough. And we ended up selling it. But somebody came and said, can you build us one like this? And we said, just buy this one. So it was in a shipping container. It was a lot of fun. But that's the kind of thing that is completely in my comfort zone that I don't even have to think about. But running the museum, I knew would be a challenge, but I felt like it was one that I could do and
Yeah, clearly.
enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And so how did this museum begin? Because I mean, I guess maybe we need to just start back at the beginning with A.R. Mitchell, right? Because a lot of
So,
people haven't heard of him. I would
right.
say,
Or the ones that knew him aren't alive anymore.
yeah,
That's what we're dealing with. So Mitchell was born in 1889, just right outside of Trinidad, and back then it was Jansen. It's still considered Jansen, but it has a Trinidad address. If you live in Jansen, you have a Trinidad address. Um, and it was 5 or 6 miles outside of town. And when he was 8 or 9, his family moved into town. His dad became the superintendent of utilities for the town of Trinidad. So if you can imagine, he was born in 1889, died in 1977.
yeah.
The things that he saw, the changes that
Hmm.
he saw from drawing. When he would run out of paper, he would draw on the wooden sidewalks that lined the Santa Fe Trail with chalk, and he was drawing all the time. Um, he had 2 sisters. Their names were Harriet and Ethel, but he called them Hat and Tot. And Tot was his best friend. Harriet was a little standoffish. She never married, never had children. Ethel, Tot, married but never had children. Mitchell never married and never had children. So when Mitchell died in 1977, he had a big life. He lived a lot of life, but in 1977, when he died, he left everything to Tot, and she Tot and several other people. Richard Loudon, Willard Loudon. Willard Loudon was an artist that um, Mitchell taught art at Trinidad State College. Willard Loudon was one of his students. Paul Milosevic was one of his students. Paul Milosevic is actually giving our artist talk tonight. Every first Friday, usually it's the featured artist in the fine art gallery in the front of the museum. But this month, Paul Milosevic is coming to give that talk. But they all got together. A lot of friends of Mitchell's got together to start the museum, and Tot left a $125,000 endowment to get things started. And we still have the majority of that endowment. In fact, I don't think we could get access to that money until we'd been open for 5 years to prove that we were sustainable. But so that's how the museum started. Ruth Henritze was also one of the kind of founders of the museum. Several fundraisers, but there wasn't any like one person other than Tot that donated a chunk of money to get it started.
This is 1981 when this opens, right?
1979 is when the museum was incorporated. We got our nonprofit status in 1979, but the doors didn't open until 1981. And so the Terrabino brothers, there was Joe and John Terrabino, and they owned the famous building. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't pay rent for 10 years when we were in the famous building. One of the brothers, I'm not sure which one, John or Joe, had lots of fun stories to tell about Mitchell. And before Mr. Terrabino died, he would come in regularly. He had dementia, and he would come in and tell me the same 3 or 4 stories, and he'd sign the guest book. And one day he came in and he was starting to sign the guest book, and he said, "I already signed it. Did you see me sign it?" "No, sir, you were here about 2 hours ago and signed the guest book," but he completely didn't remember signing the guest book. But the Terrabino brothers owned that building, and that's where we were for the first 10 years. And then moved in here.
And that was all A.R. Mitchell's work primarily at that time?
All A.R. Mitchell's work, but so people don't know.
How many pieces is that in the collection?
We have around 240 original Mitchell paintings. Then we have a large number of friends of Mitchell. So Mitchell did not like to sell his paintings. He would sell them if he needed to. I found a letter from 1953 where Mitchell kept everything. I mean, World War I Army issued spoons, political lapel pins, Wilkie, Roosevelt, Taft. I have paintbrushes, jars of varnish, tubes of paint, clothing, a suitcase, bolo ties that he wore, boots, tack.
But did he make his money through doing advertising for magazines, doing covers?
Money through illustration.
Yeah, so
that was the bulk of his career. What he did, over 160 pulp Western magazine covers, several book covers. But the letter that I found was from 1953, and it was a woman thanking him for painting something for her. I don't know what the subject matter was, and he wrote on the back of the envelope, "I painted it, framed it, and shipped it for $95. She got a steal, but I needed some cash." And so he left us notes on everything. But what he loved to do was trade with other artists. So we've got Harold von Schmidt, Harvey Dunn, which Harvey Dunn was his first real foray into art school was at the Grand Central Art School, in an illustration class under Harvey Dunn. And he was close to 35 years old when that happened. After World War I, he was living in Seattle, Washington, and he hated it. He hated everything about it. I mean, this is a boy from the Southwest living in Seattle.
Was he an artist at that point yet?
He was working in publishing then. He was doing art, but he wasn't like trying to sell it. He was working in advertising, so he would do the advertising mock-ups. He would have been doing some cartoons then, but not really making money at it. 1927, he sold his first illustration. So he started art school in 1925. 1925, he started art school in the top floor of Grand Central Station was the.
Well, he's old, right? He's about 40 years old when he starts.
So 1889, so 37. Yeah. 37 was when he started art school. And he found out that Harvey Dunn was going to be teaching this class. And then he found out that Harold von Schmidt was also going to be taking the class. And he was a fan of von Schmidt. So he sold everything, got on the train, and moved to New York City. We have a letter that he wrote his sister Tot of when he arrived in Grand Central Station. And he said, "This is the biggest hay barn I've ever seen in my life." So, I mean, he was really a country come to town kid coming, or not kid by then, 37, but he loved it. Harvey Dunn moved his kind of part of the art school to Leonia, New Jersey, which is just right across the bridge from Manhattan. It's not far at all. Mm-hmm. And Mitchell, Harvey Dunn, Frank Street, I think Frank Street's wife, Grant Renard, there was a bunch of them that moved to Leonia, New Jersey. And Mitchell kind of lived in a converted barn that became his home and studio until 1942. He did 160 magazine covers between 27 and 1942. He was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and told, put your house in order. You're about to die. Moved back to Trinidad to spend his last time with his sister, and lived another 34 years. Huh. He credits the Mayo brothers. He said they stood me up out of that casket. The Mayo brothers, or that family, had several Mitchell paintings. I don't know what happened to them, but we know that they had several. But Mitchell would always ask to retain his original artwork for these covers. Yeah. Because some of these publishing companies were doing 7 to 10 magazines a week, and they thought nothing of illustrators. They didn't really view them as real artists. Right. So they would just put them on burn piles. They'd just throw them away. Yep. So we've got a lot of his original illustrations. We have the reference photo, we have sketches, we have the original artwork, and we have the cover that it ended up on. We probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 7,000 sketches of Mitchell's, just paper sketches. Behind me are some horse sketches. Mitchell was obsessed with drawing horses. We have sketches of just the skeleton. We have sketches of the muscle, then with the hide. Back in the day, in his illustration days, he was known as one of the foremost people that could paint or draw a horse with no hooves touching the ground, bucking or jumping or running. But he was that was something that was a big deal with him, is that the horse be anatomically correct,
Right.
that it not be doing something it wasn't supposed to be doing or that it wouldn't normally do. And he was a cowboy before he left Trinidad to kind of see the world. He worked at the A6 Ranch, which is now Bermejo Ranch, Ted Turner's ranch in New
Right.
Mexico. He did that for 1 season. They invited him back for the next season, but he knew that's not what he was going to do for the rest of his life. So it was a great experience for him. He started out following the chuck wagon, but then he started working for the newspaper full time. And then in about
Do you,
1912,
you find it ironic that he worked for the newspaper and you did too?
I love that. I feel like I know him because um because we have so much of his personal artifacts.
Right.
We have hundreds of letters that were written to him. The Harvey Dunn binder alone is huge, of letters written to him from Harvey Dunn. There's so much to find out in those letters, but I also am nosy enough to want to know the other side of it. Like, oh, that was a crazy party last night. Um, say that we're still friends after that big argument. And I'm like, what were they arguing about? What were they talking about? But he loved his friends. He was when if you were a friend of Mitchell's, you were close with him. The number of letters that they wrote is mind-boggling.
Hmm.
He was writing letters. I don't think it's wrong to say that he wrote 5 letters a week
Hmm.
to different people, and we have all of the ones that they wrote for him. We have a small binder of letters that Mitchell wrote that people have given us back through the years. But we had a curator from the I believe it's the South Dakota State Museum that has the majority of, or just a lot of Harvey Dunn's. One of their curators was on a road trip with his parents and just happened to come into the museum. Just right now, we've got 6 Harvey Dunns hanging in the museum right now, and they're big, major paintings. And he said, why do you have so many Harvey Dunns? And I said, well, he and Mitchell were like brothers. They were best friends. And they had no idea that Mitchell, they didn't know who Mitchell was. And
Hmm.
2, they had no idea that he had this relationship with Dunn, because Dunn didn't keep anything. He threw everything away. So that curator came back for another visit and scanned all of those letters
Hmm.
that Dunn wrote, and they learned so much more about Dunn. Well, then they asked me to give a little talk. It was during COVID, so it was a Zoom talk to the South Dakota State Museum Guild. And I was talking about Harvey Dunn plein air painting with Mitchell. And a lady piped in and said, I think you're wrong. Harvey Dunn didn't like to plein air paint. He didn't plein air paint. So then the next slide was a photo of Harvey Dunn painting outside with Mitchell. And I said, well, he may not have liked it, but he did a lot of it, because we have probably 15 of his plein air paintings in the basement. They're not what you would look at and go, oh, yeah, that's Harvey Dunn. We just know that's what it is. Some are signed, some are not. I have one.
And did they,
I have one over here. That's a Dunn plein air painting.
the one on the left?
Right,
Yeah.
right over here.
Yeah, I was wondering. That's a great painting. You can see it.
Yeah,
Watching
I
this
love it.
you're watching this on YouTube, you can get an image, a kind of a side image of it. Otherwise,
I did try to, I did update what's behind me to show you a good example of different things that Mitchell did. Mitchell, when he wasn't doing an illustration, he called the paintings that weren't illustrations, he called them his easel pieces. He didn't call himself a fine artist. But he loved the adobe. He loved Native American culture. He and his sister would ride in the buggy down to Santa Fe and spend weeks down there just being, just absorbing the culture. When I reached out to you on Facebook, we have I'm not going to say it's a large collection, but we have quite a collection of Native American um, rugs, baskets,
Right.
pottery, textiles that all belong to Mitchell. And it's just something that I don't know enough about. I think of it as, like if somebody walked into my house and picked something up off of my dresser 50 years after I died and said, I wonder where she got this, or how, we know a lot about a lot of things with Mitchell, but I don't know. There's probably 9 or 10 pair of moccasins. A gentleman came in, his wife was in the Cowgirl Artists of America show, and he had a conversation with Mitchell years and years and years ago about a pair of moccasins that he bought off of, he was going down the road, and a Native American husband and wife were coming the other direction, and he saw this pair of moccasins. The man had his feet up on the dash, and Mitchell turned around and stopped them and bought the moccasins because he just thought they were fantastic. And he told this gentleman the story of it. And I said, well, let's go downstairs and see if we have them. Let's try to find them. And we didn't have that pair, but Mitchell did a lot of trading. He would, not only did he trade his paintings, but he would also broker sales for other artists. He just didn't like to sell his own work. If you said, man, I love that illustration of the Red River Kid, I name your price, I'll buy it, you weren't going to get it. But if you said, I love that painting, I just want to come look at it, chances were pretty good that he may bring it to your house and hang it and say, just gonna let you borrow it for a while, and then not come get it. He just, I don't know why. I've never read anything of why. He did say that he felt like they were his children since he didn't have children of his own, and maybe that's why he didn't like to sell them. But he did a lot of trading with other artists. We have a lovely Ned Jacobs that I love, and I was going to hang that behind me, but it didn't have a hanger on the back of it. So I was like, well, can't do this one.
And did he trade with Ned for that?
He and Ned were very good friends.
Okay.
They were very good friends. I wish I could go talk to Ned about it and get him to tell me stories, but from what I understand, he's not talking a whole lot these days.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what I've heard too.
Yeah.
So how many paintings in your collection are not Mitchell's?
Oh, ballpark, maybe 50.
Okay. And are you adding, is the museum adding pieces? In other words,
No, we're not. We just don't have the budget for that. If somebody has a Mitchell that they want to donate to the museum, that's great. But we're not trying to source Mitchell paintings. We actually, in 2019, in an effort to raise awareness that Mitchell was even alive,
yeah,
we teamed up with Heinemann Auctions in 2019, November 7th, 2019. We put 11 Mitchells in the auction. We put a few other things that we had. There was a Larry Heller painting called Rodeo of the Broadmoor. There was a couple Duns that we let go of, a couple sketches, Von Schmidt that we let go of. But just to raise awareness, the money that we raised didn't hurt the museum, but the main focus was to let people know that Mitchell was even alive. And it was great. It was actually on my birthday, and I'm in the auction room with 2 of the board members, and I think our lots started at like number 53 or something like that. And Maren Heinemann and Kate Lavin was standing up there with her, and Maren said, the first item in the Mitchell collection, do I have any bids in the room? And hands went up, and everybody on the phones went up, and I just start bawling like a baby because I was like, they want him, they want Mitchell, and that was just great. And we didn't really know how to price them because they hadn't come up for auction,
right,
hardly ever. The way I got teamed up with Heinemann was I just doing research. They had sold a Mitchell painting in 2016, and it was in horrible condition. I think it sold for like $600, something like that. And I just called and said, "Hey, I'm Allyson from the Mitchell Museum. If you learn of any other Mitchells, could you let us know? We like to know where they are." And it was Kate Lavin, or she was Kate Harrington, not just Kate Lavin. Um, she was like, who are you talking? I don't know who Mitchell is. And then within a week or so, she came down to the museum and saw all the rest of what we had, and she was like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm, you know, overwhelmed by what we had. Then within a few weeks, Marin came down with her and said, we want to help. Um, they gave us a fantastic commission rate. They almost did it for free, not totally for free, but they really wanted to help the museum and help raise awareness. They put Mitchell on the cover, one of Mitchell's paintings on the cover of the catalog. They really marketed it, and everything was going great. And then it was just 3 months later that COVID hit. And yeah. So then it was just like, we kind of did that for nothing, because we were almost closed for 2 years. We could still have visitors because our space is so big and so open. It wasn't little tiny rooms, but we couldn't have any events, which is a big part of our budget, is using the building to bring in revenue. We have a big event tomorrow. Next weekend, there's a wedding for 150 people. Then we have our ball. We couldn't do any of that. We couldn't have a fundraiser, nothing. And so,
how big is Trinidad anyway?
Trinidad's about 9,000 people, but it's a border town. So I would say 9,000 residents, but we're right on I-25. We are dead in the center between Santa Fe and Denver. It's a great meeting place.
And there's a lot in the basin too, right? I mean, I assume there's got to be 20,000 in that basin or so, isn't there?
So Los Angeles County is the largest geographical county in Colorado, but it's not the largest populated, for sure. But like last weekend, we had Lifetime Fitness does the Rad Dirt Fest. This was, I believe it was their 4th year, and that brings in tons of tourism. I think around 1,000 cyclists doing up to 140-mile gravel bike race. Los Angeles County has more dirt roads than paved roads. So it's perfect for that kind of thing. We have 2 state parks. We have Trinidad Lake State Park and Fisher's Peak State Park. So it really is a tourism area, and they're really trying to develop it with outdoor rec and art.
And
there's a lot of artists in Trinidad.
The downtown is just all red brick buildings, right? And they seem like they're all
stone, a lot of stone buildings, a lot of foundations are stone. Red brick streets. Trinidad had a brick factory that all of our brick streets came from. And because we're a border town, I think at one time we had close to 30 dispensaries. So we have a lot of Texas license plates. Some of them have shut down since New Mexico has legalized marijuana, but not a lot. We still have a lot of people. It's still Colorado, and it's still a beautiful area with a lot to see and do. There's something going on all the time.
So. Well, it's a different city because it's a mix of really, to me, it feels like New Mexico and Colorado. It feels like
Well, it's funny because you come over the Raton Pass, and the geography changes just from the top of the Raton Pass. Same way, if you're going towards New Mexico over the Raton Pass, you are looking at a beautiful New Mexican landscape. And it's amazing.
The culture is there is very, very New Mexican. You know, they're making Rio Grande blankets in Trinidad, in that area.
And green chili and all the things. We are so close. I just feel like we're cousins with New Mexico because we're just right there. But it's a gorgeous area, and by Colorado standards, it's still a very reasonably priced place to live. You can get a lot for your money in Trinidad. If you scooped my house up, my 1910 Craftsman house and put it in Denver, I
Yeah.
could retire a happy woman by selling that house. In Trinidad, it's very affordable.
Yeah. But the museum, I assume, is really one of the bigger draws. I mean, you're a
It is like
9,000 town, which has a, was it 50,000 square foot?
yeah, 47,000 square
Yeah.
feet of space. Our third floor is artist studios. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 artist studios. We've only got 2 vacancies right now. We have a big pottery studio that's rented out. There's gallery space upstairs. There's storage space upstairs. We just did a big assessment with History Colorado to see if where our collection is stored currently in the building is the right place for it. And so next on the fundraising list is raising money to move the collection up to the third floor. We need to do some things to the rooms that it would go into first, but that's just the list is as long as my arm of what
And
we.
do you, so you rent out spaces to artists and to, there's actually commercial galleries that are in the museum?
There's one commercial gallery. It's Keel Fine Art. That's Cody Keel. He did a solo show in the museum and loved it. It was a very successful show, and we kind of hit it off. And he said, I think I'd like to open a gallery in Trinidad. And I said, well, why don't you do it inside the museum? We've got the space.
Right.
And in the front of the museum, it was an old. There was a wall in it with a little door that led to like a storefront, like the window. And we had it decorated with Mitchell, like welcome to the Mitchell Museum kind of thing, and some old West memorabilia. But it really, you couldn't see into the museum. You didn't know what it was. So we took that wall down and put up 5 rolling walls. So when we have an event, we just roll those walls up into the front window, and there's your dance floor and where the band is or DJ or whatever. But it really allowed people to see into the building, and all that contemporary art got a whole new demographic coming into the museum. And then they walk in and go, wait a minute, what's all of this? When they see Mitchell and Dunn and Von Schmidt and want to know all about that. It's pretty dynamic. Most people that just wander into the museum, they think they're coming into a gift shop because that's what they see from the street. When you're walking down Main Street, you walk into the building, and if I had $1 for every time somebody went, whoa,
Yeah.
we'd be set. I wouldn't have to ever fundraise again. But it just opens up to this big 2-story space with the mezzanine and a big staircase going up right through the middle of the museum. And the mezzanine level is where we have all of our shows. This year we had Uncommon Collective, which was a printmaking show. We had we had Character and Context, which was an illustration show, which was so fun. There was 53 different artists from all over the planet, from Japan, from Canada, from all over the United States.
Who curates these shows?
So because I'm not an artist, I'm not a curator, we find people like Elliot Lang curated the illustration show, along with Cody Keel, our board president. Johanna Mueller and Jennifer Gromley curated the printmaking show. Cowgirl Artists of America, Megan Wimberly and Morgan Buck. Oh, what is Morgan's last name? She made a beautiful, she's a leathersmith, Morgan Buckert. They curated the Cowgirl Artists of America show, and then the resident show that opens tomorrow, that's our show that we curate. We do that one.
So you have guest curators that come in and bring in different shows. Right. And it sounds like you do a lot of those. Sounds like you're doing like 3 or 4 shows a year. Is that right?
Next year is Cowgirl Artists of America are coming back. The illustration show is coming back, and we're adding just before the illustration show, we're adding a Louis L'Amour illustration show, and then that with Greg Manchess, and that's going to lead into the big character and context show. And we have Thomas Blackshear on the hook for that one. He this is how ignorant I am about artists. I was messing with the labels for the illustration show. And what was fun about the illustration show is that we had everybody submit process pieces too. So there were thumbnails, there were sketches, there were color studies. It was just fantastic. But the labels were a nightmare. It was just a box. We got them from our local printer. It was a box full of labels. And I was trying to organize them all. And it was the same weekend as Pre to West. And I was in the museum by myself. I'm often down at the front desk. And two gentlemen came in, and I just said, go ahead and look around, holler if you need anything. I'm just right up here. And Thomas Blackshear starts walking up the stairs, and he said, I did not expect to see 5 Harvey Dunns in Trinidad, Colorado.
Right.
And I did, and he wasn't really aware of Mitchell. And so he starts to see the illustrations, and he's not freaking out, but he's telling his friend, there's Greg Manchess, there's C.F. Payne, and he's looking at me. He goes, do you know what you have? This could really be life-changing for this museum if people come to this and know this is here. I've never seen a better illustration show. And he starts walking around the mezzanine, and I'm just kind of trying to go through these labels. And his friend looks at me, he goes, he's kind of a big deal. And I said, well, what's his name? And I write it down, and I just introduced myself to him. And I said, well, because they were kind of pressed for time trying to get to the Pre to West. And I knew that he was an artist in the Pre to West, but I just wasn't really concerned about it because these labels were such a nightmare. And I said, when y'all are on your way back, if you have more time, I'll take you down into the archives and show you the other Dunns that we have in Von Schmidt. And I was down at the front desk, and I was just about to Google him, and Cody Kill walks in, and I said, do you know somebody named Thomas Blackshear? And he goes, Allyson. Come on. He's one of the best artists around right now. I can't believe you don't know who he is. I'm like, I'm stuck here in this museum. I don't leave. I don't know who he is. But then I figured out who he was, and Nicholas Reddy, who was on our board, was going to the Pre to West. So I called Nicholas, and I said, find somebody named Thomas Blackshear and introduce yourself to him, because he was just in the museum today. And then Nicholas ended up in a sculpting class at the Broadmoor with Donna Howe Sickles, and who walks in but Thomas Blackshear. And now Nicholas is taking portrait classes from Thomas, and now he's going to be in our illustration show next year. So this building does things like that.
And what is the illustration show you're going to have?
Illustration show is last year was, or this year it was 53 artists. I'm not sure how many it's going to be coming up, but after this show, there was a whole lot more interest, more people wanting to be in the illustration show for next year. It is anything from Western illustration to sci-fi to Magic the Gathering cards or Dungeons and Dragons. All that stuff is hanging in the museum, and
it's for sale, right?
For sale, all for sale. All of our shows, the first floor of the museum, except for Kill Fine Art Gallery, is museum permanent collection exhibits, not for sale. But the mezzanine level is where all of our shows, where we sell the art. The artists get 70%, we get 30%. And out of our 30%, we'll pay that guest curator a percentage, whatever is decided on.
Yeah.
Some of them say, no, keep it for the museum. Some we negotiate a deal for them. But it's a lot of work to curate a show with 53 artists. And that illustration show had 179 pieces in it. Mm-hmm. And I still have about 7 boxes that still need to be shipped back out. But that's logistically, that's a lot to ask of somebody to to curate a show like that. Now I don't just step back and say, you got it all, you handle it all. I do everything I can to help it run smoothly, administrative wise, but they're choosing on the artist or inviting them or during the show. That I don't do much of that at all.
And so you do these shows, they raise money, you do local fundraising, you do events like weddings and different things as well. And so how do people find you both geographically and also just online? I went to your website, saw that, but
so armitchellmuseum.com is our website. You can donate on the museum. All of our shows now, we just got a new website this year. So all of our shows that we do, the pieces from the shows will be on the website also. And that has helped with sales tremendously.
Like, can they buy from that website?
You can buy it directly from the website.
That's A.R. Mitchell, right?
A.R. Mitchell Museum at gmail.com. And we're located at 150 East Main Street in Trinidad.
Yeah, have Instagram too?
We do. We have Instagram, A.R. Mitchell Museum, and Facebook, A.R. Mitchell Museum of Western Art.
And who does that? Do you do that?
Some. I am not Instagram savvy. I still have to call my kids and say, I think I have a message on Instagram. How do I find that message? But Cody Kill does most of our social media. And when he posts it to Instagram, it posts to Facebook too. Every now and then we'll get a young artist that will volunteer. Right now, Autumn Honeycutt is doing she's a local artist. She's doing our social media for the resident show and for our upcoming ball. So you're looking at the only actual employee of the building. The title is executive director, but I'm also the snow shoveler and the event setter-upper and the toilet unplugger. It's just what it is when I say we're a small museum. It's a big building, and we have been open for 43 years, but we're just now getting to a point where we can start hiring some staff. We're looking at hiring a grant writer, probably a contract grant writer, not somebody full-time on staff in here. But my board is phenomenal. I've had, like I said, I was on the board, so I've done that side of it, and I've been through boards. When I first was hired, they were trying to shut down the museum and kind of using me to drain the funds and shut it down. And I had to give up my board position to take the job. So there were things that I wasn't privy to anymore. And once I got wind of it, it was kind of a grapevine. One of the board members contacted a gallery owner in Denver about relocating the collection. They contacted a woman that was doing some developing in Trinidad. She called the mayor, and the mayor called me and said, I just heard the museum is shutting down. And so I got a few new board members on the board to vote out the ones that wanted to close it. And we've been going ever since. We opened back up. It used to be closed from October to May. The museum was just shut down. Now we're open year round. I just feel like you're paying me to be the director. I can be the director from this office, or I can be the director from the front desk. And whatever it takes to move the museum forward. We used to maybe have one exhibit a year or none at all. And now we have 4 a year. Yeah. And I mean, Cowgirl Artist came down Tuesday and the new show opens Friday.
Yeah.
I don't want to see blank walls. I don't,
how long is that show up for?
The Cowgirl Artist show was up for 2 months. The resident show will be up October, November, and December.
Yeah. And that's the one that's just about to open. And is that online too?
It is, but it's not quite ready yet. Where since this is the first year that we've put it online, a lot of our artists that are in it didn't send us their digital images. So all the images that we have are online right now. But as soon as the show is finished being hung, we'll snap the images of the ones that we don't have and load those onto the website. It may or may not be done in time for Friday, but it'll be done by next week for sure. It is my favorite thing that we do because it takes these old photos that I know Mitchell didn't see them as art. They were just, I mean, I've got boxes of photos at home because when we were growing up, you had to develop your film to know what you had.
Right.
And he didn't throw any of it away. So there's rodeo pictures, there's just landscape pictures, there's definitely reference photos where he has somebody posing and he's sketching them and then putting them on a magazine cover.
Has
But
anyone done a book on Mitchell at all?
yes, Dean Crakel
Oh,
did a
Dean.
book in the
Okay.
80s, this Mitch book.
Mm.
And then there's another one that we have here called Mitchellisms, and it's hilarious. It is laugh out loud funny because Mitchell, there's a letter in the Mitchellism book by this lady Joan Reese, and he dated several women. He had long-term relationships, but this letter from Joan Reese says, "Dear Mitch, what two-legged heifer in her right mind would try to lasso such a cantankerous, chauvinistic, opinionated, ornery, lovable old curmudgeon? Love, Joan Reese. P.S. Hope to see you when you move to Denver. We're only a couple blocks from your sister." That was him in a nutshell. Ornery, chauvinistic, curmudgeon, but she can't wait to see him. But this book is full of stuff like that, and that's written by Richard Loudon, who was kind of one of the founders of the museum, and his brother Willard. And Richard Loudon's granddaughter, Christine Loudon, is one of our board members. So to kind of keep that family legacy going. But so these Mitch books, we ran out of them. They were out of print. Dean Crakel died and we couldn't get any more of them. We had the original manuscripts in the basement. But I would go online and try to find copies of it reasonably priced that I could resell in the gift shop. And I found 3 listings on eBay last year, and it was 10 Mitch books, 5 Mitch books, or 3 Mitch books. And I emailed them and said, and it was all by the same seller. And I emailed him and said, I'll take them all. I'll buy all the Mitch books that you've got. He was asking $10 a piece for them. And I get a call or an email or something from this gentleman named David Gallagher. And he said, "Are you sure you want all of them?" I said, "Yeah, it's 15 books at $10 a piece. I want them all." He said, "I have 5,000 of them." I said, how and why do you have 5,000 Mitch books? He bought an old church building somewhere in Missouri that this gentleman named Pendleton owned. Pendleton was working on a Dean Crakel biography, and for some reason had all of these Mitch books still in the box, brand new, wrapped in plastic. And as Mr. Gallagher started clearing out this big building that he bought, he found these filing cabinets full of Crakel information. It ended up being all of Crakel's research for all the books that he wrote, personal letters, pieces of artwork, research, basically the catalog of how and when Crakel sourced all the paintings for the National Cowboy Museum when he was the director there. So he was the founding director there.
So did you end up with all this?
We have all of that. Mr. Gallagher showed up in a U-Haul. We had 2 interns for 6 weeks trying to just do an overview catalog of what was there, because David Gallagher doesn't know anything about any of it. He may now, after going through this building and getting together anything with Craigle's name on it. Um, it's enough for a tell-all or a movie or exhibits. It's information that we don't necessarily need here, but we need to figure out what information we have. There's information on Cowboy Artists of America. There's the letter that Dean Cragle wrote Cowboy Artists of America, telling them that they were separating from, they were going to start the Prix de West and not have just the Cowboy Artists of America show at the National Cowboy Museum. We have that letter. There's so much information. We took two of those. We took an office, an old office on the third floor where those artist studios are, and made that kind of research library. There's still a whole lot of research that needs to be done for us to even know what we have. Like right now, we know we have 2 accordion files on Cowboy Artists of America, but I can't tell you what's in those 2 accordion files.
People can come and do research if they're
eventually, when we know what we have and it's better organized. Right now, it's in the filing cabinets that came out of that old building in Missouri and rode to Trinidad. And still trying to figure out what David Gallagher wants out of it. I'm sure he's trying to make money off of all this information that he has, if he can, which I don't blame him for that. But I don't know that any of it is actually, I don't know if it's able to be monetized. It's information.
Well, it can be monetized by him getting an appraisal, donating it to you, and then he can get a big tax write-off.
Yeah, we have suggested that. Now, he did give us a really good deal on those 5,000 books. He sounds like really and truly, there's nobody on the planet that wants these books but us. I mean, nobody would want 5,000 books about a man that nobody knows really existed. Now, it is strange to me that, I mean, I understand how it happened because Mitchell didn't market himself. He didn't sell a lot. All the artists of that time knew him and knew him well, but he wasn't famous. Like, I think he was just as good as Remington and Russell and Maynard Dixon. He studied Charlie Russell. We have tracings that he did of some Russell pieces, but he wrote, "This is not my work. I traced this from Charlie Russell. I was working on a headdress or working on the shape of a skull." And I used to think that he would be rolling over in his grave to know that there was a whole museum dedicated just to him. But then I spent an hour in the basement going, he planned this whole thing. He wouldn't have kept all of this and took all of these notes. I mean, every sketch pad, there's just so much that we have of his to start this museum. But he was the king of Western pulps. Nobody else did 160 magazine covers. Nobody. But I mean, he was doing 2 a month, basically, was his average. He was selling 2 a month. And but somebody like that did so much that is highly recognizable, you just don't know that's Mitchell. Like if I held up a magazine cover, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've seen those all over," but nobody knows.
Do you know if he knew Maynard Dixon?
I think he had to have.
Yeah, well, I figured he knew him, but do you know if they ever corresponded? You have all that.
I have not come across a letter from Maynard Dixon, but I also haven't laid eyes on every letter.
Because he's illustrating from like 27 to 42, basically. Yeah. Okay.
So 27 to 42, and then he moved back to Trinidad to spend time with his sister. Started teaching art. Really founded the art department at Trinidad State College. Do you know Paul Milosevic? Paul Milosevic taught. Here's a nice connection. He was Donna Howe Sickles' drawing teacher at Texas Tech. So he's from Trinidad. He was born and raised in Trinidad, ended up teaching art at Texas Tech, took art classes at Trinidad State from Mitchell, and went on to, he's best known as a portrait artist. He did a lot of golf professionals and country singers.
Mm,
Uh, but he's lived in Santa Fe for years and years and years now. He's maybe around 87 now.
yeah.
Uh,
And
but
he's talking tomorrow for
yep,
you? Yeah.
tonight. He's
Yeah.
talking tonight.
Well, we won't get to see this because this won't come on for about 2 weeks, but
It's
we might get to see the other show, which is the
and they,
title of that. That's
the
Resonance.
resonance show. It
Yeah.
is fantastic. It
And that's
really
up through the end of December.
for the end of the year. It's up to the end of the year. And but so Mitchell hung out with all these artists. He knows all these artists. He corresponded with them, but people outside of the art world don't really
Well,
know
we're working on it right now.
it. That's what my job is. So last summer, February 2023, a Mitchell painting came up for auction in Pennsylvania. It was some fundraiser in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And Nicholas Reddy, that owns what you met Nicholas. He owns OB Joyful Gallery in Crested Butte. He
Right.
bought that painting. And last summer, I think it was July, I got my Western Art and Architecture magazine and I'm thumbing through it. And here's that painting that I know sold at auction. And so I called the gallery, and Tracy, his gallery manager, answered, and I wasn't getting anything from Tracy. I was like, "This is who I am from the Mitchell Museum. Can you tell me anything about the painting?" She's like, "Yeah, it sold." I said, "Can you tell me what it sold for?" I'm not asking who it sold to. I'm just curious because it's been since really 2019 since Mitchell has sold. And she's like, "No, I can't tell you any of that." And I just kind of said, "Okay." And then Nicholas called, and we hit it off right away. And he was doing a talk in his gallery, OB Joyful in Crested Butte. And I went for the talk, and I brought a Mitchell painting with me because he wanted to have a Mitchell to do the talk on Mitchell, but he had sold his. So and he hates it that he sold it. But in Nicholas, I found a super fan of Mitchell's that I didn't know existed. And my husband gets so frustrated because you put Nicholas and I in a room and we just talk nonstop about the museum and Mitchell. And he's now on our board. He's coming into town today for the opening tomorrow. But since Nicholas did a lot of landscapes. But since he's been affiliated with the museum and doing a deep dive in the basement and Mitchell sketches and meeting Thomas Blackshear, his paintings are changing.
Yeah, artists can do that. They can
Yeah.
influence other artists.
He's just finding something that he didn't know he
Yeah.
had. And I love that for him. And I love that the museum played a little tiny part in that. Anytime someone comes in the door and they tell me they're an artist, one time a guy came in and he was asking about Harvey Dunn and talking about Harvey Dunn's art teacher, and I thought, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about, and it's slow. So I just said, would you like to go in the basement and see the rest of the collection? I'll just walk the front door and put the clothes sign on.
So who was it?
It's Glenn Dean.
Yeah,
it was Glenn Dean.
So Glenn was the first person who told me about the museum. So that's what I heard about. And I think that's what you have to do in getting the word out, like this podcast we did today, is to have those, there'll be people that will find it from what we've done here. And yeah, Glenn was the first one to go, "Oh,
that's great to know. That's great. I just had a good feeling about him. I just
thought it was very special.
I just instantly liked him and had a good feeling about him. And as they're leaving, his wife gives me his card and says, "My husband's an artist too." And that was, so many people come in and tell me they're an artist, and I just said, "That's lovely, it's wonderful." And then I Googled him and I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, he's a very humble.
Why didn't I know this before?
Yeah, he's a humble guy.
But just so nice. Just so nice. And Tom Connor has been in, Wayne Bays has been in.
Yeah.
Mark Majori says he told somebody else that he's been in, but I'm sitting here going, I think I'd remember. I don't think I would have missed it.
You never know.
I know.
So I will get the word out. We appreciate you coming on and telling us. And now
Well, thanks for calling.
and then we have the way for them to get you Instagram, website, and go by and see the museum. And I haven't been by, but I'll come and sneak in a disguise.
Let me know when you're coming. We can put you up and give you some good stuff to see in the basement.
Thank you. All right, very good. I appreciate Allison. I can tell this is your project of love. It's more than just a job.
I do love it.
Yeah, I could tell
I
it's
really do love
I can tell you realize this is an important cultural component of Trinidad. And without this museum, Trinidad loses something greatly. And clearly you're there to make it.
it. Thank you.
All right, I'll let you get that call.
No,
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.